The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Wednesday. It is August 26, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's go right to Kenosha, Wisconsin, where last night a white militia teenager, 17-year-old, shot and killed two protesters. He wounded a third. He has since been arrested, and this is only after police officers allowed him to leave the state. He is an outside agitator. Kyle Rittenhouse. He came from out of state into Wisconsin to join a band of white militiamen who were assisting, quote unquote, assisting the police in Kenosha, trying to, quote unquote, manage the protest. There are several videos. I'm debating on whether I'm not going to show you the videos of the shooting because you can see the shooting very clear. He shot someone, and when he realized what he did, you could hear him say on the video, "I shot someone," and there's a body that's laying in that video. So I'm not going to play that video. It's all over the internet if you must see it. Then the second video is of him running away, and a crowd following him, chasing him, and trying to alert the police. This is clear as day. They pass up multiple police cars, and they're trying to alert the police that this is the guy who just shot someone. He trips. He falls to the ground. He turns around and starts shooting in the crowd, where he guns down multiple people, or two additional people. One was killed and one was severely injured. There's also another video. Now, this is the video that I think I will play, and the audio is kind of difficult to decipher. But in that third video, this is before everything happened, you can see him walking side by side with Kenosha police officers, getting water from Kenosha PD and being thanked multiple times by Kenosha PD. And actually, that video is all over the internet as well. No, I'm going to play that one. I'm going to play that one because I want you to hear the gratitude in the voices of the policing agencies telling these white armed militia vigilantes, thank you for their assistance.
Now we're all the way back by the gas station again.
Hey, thank you guys, man. Need water? Seriously. Guys, to our right, you need water.
We need water.
We'll throw you one.
Thank you. All right, come on, guys, let's get out of here. Damn. Which way should we go?
Great, we'll give you some. We'll throw you a couple. Thank you. Yes, you. You are a civilian. This area is closed to them. You're trespassing. Leave. Leave now. We got a couple. We got to save a couple, but we'll give you a couple. We appreciate you guys. We really do.
Hey, can we go this way? Can we walk this way? Hold on. I need a step. I'm sure they have a lot of bottles of water.
That's all we can spare.
Nice truck, guys.
Believable, unbelievable. That is the conversation between police officers and the white supremacist militias that showed up to help police the protesters. Now, those of you who are listening via the podcast, you couldn't see it, but in that video is the young man who shot and killed two protesters and injured a third. He is in that video. And so he, of course, at 17-year-old, he feels deputized. He's probably surprised today that he's being arrested because he felt like what he was doing was justified and that he was deputized because he got thanks directly from the police. He got assistance. He got water. He got the gratitude of the police. So, of course, he feels justified in what he was doing. And here's the real rub, man. The rub is the fact that we spend so much time lecturing each other in progressive circles and on the left about the type of protests that are acceptable, the type of protests that are good, that won't hurt us electorally. Yesterday, there's a video of, and it was cringeworthy, the video of that mob who was harassing the lady at the diner saying white silence is violence, right? And they're trying to force her to participate. It was cringeworthy. But yesterday, some of my friends in this media circle, they spent the day, worried about that. Like, oh, this is how we're going to lose elections. And this is bad. This is cringeworthy. And these are all my friends, like legitimately, like they are legit my friends in this space. But the problem is that we spend more time dotting our I's and crossing our T's trying to find the perfectly acceptable type of protest while white supremacists are out here killing us. It is an asymmetrical battle that's going on right now where we on the left, we who are progressives, are trying to finesse the perfect revolution, that the commentariat can lead. Meanwhile, white supremacists are on the ground with their weapons, gunning down protesters who don't have anything but their words and maybe a protest sign. We are engaged in an asymmetrical fight, and it's time. Honestly, it is time that you stop listening to us. I know this sounds ridiculous because you're watching me right now, but if there is anybody in the commentary class who's trying to lecture you on the acceptable form of protest, meanwhile these white supremacists are out here killing us, stop listening to us, to them. Because there will never be an acceptable form of protest, yet and still right-wingers like Ben Shapiro, Andy Ngo, and all of them are out here justifying and explaining and giving cover for this boy, this man, this 17-year-old grown-ass man, because if he was black, they would call him a man. They're justifying the killings. They're trying to explain it away. They're trying to say, oh, it was self-defense. They're coming up with all these excuses. Meanwhile, the commentary class on our side, they're so busy saying, well, that was kind of rude what you did at the diner. That was, that was cringeworthy. We shouldn't be harassing people. We're getting gunned down in the streets. This is so off balance, off kilter. We do not have time. There has to be a complete divorce between the commentariat faux revolutionaries who have made a lot of money off of you because they can talk in terms of the theoretical revolution, but when the shit hit the fan, they didn't do anything but sit back and critique how you actually protested. I want to play a second clip from Kenosha last night, and this is one of the militiamen, one of the armed white militia individuals who showed up to help the police, and this is what they said about what the police instructed them to do with regard to the protesters. Listen in.
You left the city open.
Well, do you know what the cops told us today? They were like, we're going to push them down by you because you can deal with them, and then we're going to leave.
See,
and then
we're going to push them down there by you so that you can deal with them. Listen, I want to stress something. There has always, no, let me start that again. White nationalists and the ideology behind white supremacy is what is at the core of our policing agencies in this country. People make the mistake of thinking that the police are somehow apolitical, meaning that once they put on that badge, that they are no longer political actors. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Policing agencies across this country have a definitive, clearly defined political allegiance and political ideology. Their political allegiance is generally to the Republican Party and specifically to Donald Trump. We see policing unions now, the New York Police Benevolent Association, fully endorsing Donald Trump. And if you look at the voting records of policing of police officers over the years, they consistently vote with the conservative consensus. They are political actors, and they have a political ideology underneath it, which is why when they see white nationalist militia groups come out, they see allies. They don't see a group that has to be policed in addition to the Black Lives Matter protests. They look at the white nationalist militia men as allies. And that's the only way. I mean, that's it. That's it. I don't have anything else to add to that except for how disgusting it is. How disgusting it is that this is acceptable in our country. Not only acceptable, but it is so acceptable that it is baked into our conversation. Nobody even really discusses how right-wing and authoritarian our policing agencies are in this country. Nobody really even broaches that. Nobody's willing to broach that subject. Right? Because it's almost like, oh, how dare you say that the police are political? They are political actors. They are carrying out a very specific ideology. They are protecting a very specific portion of our society, and it's not working people. It's not marginalized communities. They're not protecting and serving black people. They're not protecting and serving impoverished communities. They're protecting and serving white supremacist power, white Christian men, capitalism, and everything that you and I would fight against. And so when you see militiamen, this shouldn't shock anyone. This shouldn't be breaking news. But yet and still, it's shocking because nobody talks about it on a consistent basis. There is no national discourse around the fact that the policing agencies in this country are very specifically aligned with a right-wing ideology. Let's go to last night's RNC convention. I'm not in the mood and I don't have much of a stomach to just talk raw politics. I want to talk about it in context of everything that's happening. There's a clip of a guy named Daniel Crawford. He's a young black man who is the Attorney General of Kentucky, and he is the mentee of Mitch McConnell. And I want to play a little portion of what he said last night. And the reason I'm bringing him up in context of everything that happened is because I want you to keep in mind that Breonna Taylor, her killers, those cops who gunned her down while she slept, they're still free. And no one is there doesn't seem to be any movement on getting justice for Breonna Taylor. And if you want to understand why, it's because of this Attorney General. Listen in.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Cameron. I'm 34 years old and the first African-American Attorney General in Kentucky history. It is an honor to be with you as a proud Republican and supporter of Donald J. Trump. And for Republicans, our heroes are those who propelled an imperfect nation ever forward, always striving to make life better for everyone. Even as anarchists mindlessly tear up American cities while attacking police and innocent bystanders, we Republicans do recognize those who work in good faith towards peace, justice, and equality. Whether you are the family of Breonna Taylor or David Dorn, these are the ideals that will heal our nation's wounds. Republicans will never turn a blind eye to unjust acts, but neither will we accept an all-out assault on Western civilization.
Okay, that's about all I could take of this. This is the quintessential example of everyone's skin to you isn't kin to you. This black man using his blackness as, and even had the nerve to use Breonna Taylor's name in his speech when he refuses to give Breonna Taylor justice. He refuses to see that her killers are brought to justice, but he's got the nerve to use her name. I swear to God, these sadistic bastards are going to get me arrested. I promise you. I'm going to spend some time in jail eventually. I already see it on the horizon. Just you guys get my bail fund ready for me, because I cannot stomach the level of hubris that would push a man to use a victim of a crime that he could bring justice, use her name in a political speech to position himself as a person of moral, upstanding righteousness when he's basically a piece of shit using a dead black woman for his political advantage. I can't stomach that. Matter of fact, I got caught on a hot mic situation last night, covering this on the Young Turks on TYT. So I don't really have much more that I could say about this, other than the fact that we're outgunned. We are outgunned, not just literally, but rhetorically. We are outgunned because there's no limit. There is nothing that these people will not do to ensure that they protect quote unquote Western civilization. Like he said at the end of his speech, Western civilization, which is a dog whistle for white Christian male supremacy. They'll throw in Judeo-Christian just to bring in people like Ben Shapiro. But at the end of the day, it's white male Christian supremacy. That is what they mean when they say Western civilization. And there's nothing that they won't do. There's no amount of gaslighting that they won't engage in. There's no amount of bad faith that they won't engage in. There's no amount of disingenuousness that they won't engage in. There's no amount of lies that they won't spew. There's no amount of political machinations that they won't go through just to keep them from losing an inch in their political power and the political power of those who prop them up and the political and economic power of those who pay their bills. It's not just white male Christian men. It's the collaborators of color like Daniel Cameron. I call him earlier? David Cameron, Crawford, whatever I called him. Daniel Cameron. It is the collaborators of color like Daniel Cameron who do the bidding of white Christian male supremacy in this country, because that is their route to political and economic power. And this is what we're dealing with, folks. I want you to be clear what we're dealing with. Donald Trump tweeted this a few moments ago. He said, "We will not stand for the looting, arson, violence, and lawlessness on American streets. My team just got off the phone with Governor Evers, who agreed to accept federal assistance. Portland should do the same." Then he said, watch, "Today I will be sending federal law enforcement and the National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin to restore law and order." Folks, one of Donald Trump's supporters killed 2 people last night. That's not the law and order he's talking about. He has zero regard for the lives of the people who were killed last night because they are not on his side politically. But he's going to send in the troops to suppress the people who were shot at last night. The people who are protesting on behalf of Black lives, because it's more important to them to protect property than it is to protect the lives of people with whom they disagree politically. This is what we're up against. We cannot play around with Donald Trump or any of these right-wing conservatives. I get that neoliberals are a plague and we have to address them also. But Donald Trump will sit by and watch you get killed and send in police officers, federal agents to oppress you, the victim of the crime. He has no regard for the fact that one of his supporters, you goddamn well know that he was a Donald Trump supporter. Don't get pedantic on me. You know that little shit was a Make America Great Again teenager. And he's going to say, no statement about that violence. White supremacist violence is okay to them. White supremacist violence is okay and always explainable. It's easily explained away to them. It's not a problem. They don't see the problem. They look at us when someone burns a car, like that's the problem, but not white supremacist murder. I need you to be clear on this. They will sit by. We are run by people. This country is run by people who will sit by and watch you get killed and would think it is okay. Because somewhere along the line, you did something. You did something to justify your own killing because they have the right ideology. The killer had the correct ideology. The killer had the ideology of conservatism, of right-wing of white nationalist right-wing supremacy. If they have the right ideology, they will. There's an entire list of people, of explainers who will go above and beyond to explain it, not only in terms of like top tier figures like Donald Trump himself, but mid-tier figures like Ben Shapiro, all the way down to regular scumbags on social media. They will never see white supremacist violence as a problem in this country, but they will see your protest as a problem that needs to be put down.
Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
I want to go over one more thing before we do this, before I get away for the patron party. I want to discuss the false equivalences that are continuously drawn specifically by centrists and liberals. And the reason I say that is because on the opposite side, right wingers and Republicans, they don't draw an equivalence between their so-called radicals and our so-called radicals. They view their radicals, they're extremists. They view them as moral agents. Centrists look at right-wing radicals and be like, oh, they're horrible. But then they look at left-wing so-called radicals and like, they're horrible too. I just can't tell the difference between them. Somebody sent a tweet earlier today that I think nails it perfectly. Just Lana on Twitter at Maple Spectre. She said, just remember, left-wing radicals want universal health care and right-wing radicals want to hunt black people for sport. That's the difference. Right-wing radicals in this country have a fetish. They fetishize shooting black people and brown people and quote-unquote terrorists, Muslims. They have fantasies about this. They literally create these entire constructs, these entire role-playing scenarios in their minds where they're the hero because they got a chance to gun down the dark-skinned terrorists or the Black Lives Matter terrorists. This is no hyperbole. This is exactly what they do. They dream about harming a good portion of our society because we look different, because we believe different, because we live differently, because we are different from them. And so the false equivalence that's drawn between liberal, but the false equivalence that liberals draw between leftists and right wingers to try to say that we're the same. How are we the same? Because what we're fighting for is the liberation of all people. What we're fighting for is for everyone to be able to see a damn doctor. What we're fighting for is for everyone to be able to live and to have food and to be housed and to be able to get an education, a quality education. How can you draw an equivalent? It's because of the laziness of the political ideology that is liberalism. And by them drawing an equivalence between fascism and those of us who fight for Medicare for all, they empower fascism. They empower the white supremacists. They empower the people who would dream about being able to gun us down in the streets. And they would say that those people are exactly the same as those of us who fight for Medicare for all. those of us who fight for a universal basic income, those of us who fight for a better life for every single individual that we encounter, regardless of what they believe, regardless of who they love, regardless of their gender, regardless of anything about their immutable characteristics, anything about them. We want them to have access to the same quality lifestyle, a baseline. We're radical because we want a baseline standard of living for every single individual in this country. And yet there's a false equivalence and continuously drawn between us and right wingers whose greatest fantasy is killing us. My greatest fantasy is the end of homelessness, the end of poverty, the end of people not being able to see a doctor. Their greatest fantasy is gunning us down in the damn streets. Not exactly the kind of segue I would want to go into a patron party, but what the hell, let's go into the patron party.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a second to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Eric Hetzel. Thank you for becoming a patron. Fernanda Garcia, thank you for becoming a patron. Sean Troxel, thank you for becoming a patron. Halana Roman, thank you so very much for becoming a patron. Wait a minute. Jackie, thank you for becoming a patron. Jelani Gandhi, thank you so much for becoming a patron. And AJ Conklin, thank you for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut, unfiltered interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, but more importantly, power into the powerless, whether the powerful like it or not. You heard me?
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. So, I think the most important thing to take away from today is you got to know the score. You got to know where we are. You got to know what time it is. And I'm not going to be over dramatic here and say that I think it's time for a revolution. I always think it's time for, I'm looking like, where's it? Is it time? I'm not going to say that yet. But what I will say is it's time for you to understand who's really in this for money and who's not really in this for actual change. Some people are doing this for the sake of commentary, just for the sake of hearing their own voices. There's nothing about this that I do that I do enjoy hearing my own voice. Like I finally got to a point where I'm comfortable hearing my own voice and I actually like my voice now. So that is a thing, but I digress. It has nothing, literally nothing to do with what I'm trying to say. I'm saying there's some people who just want to hear themselves speak. And then there's some people who understand how lucrative this field is. Because if they just hit the number of views that they need to hit every single day, they can make enough money to buy them a home. You know, and there's some people who are here because they want to control the revolution. They want to be able to dictate the nature and the terms of the revolution. They want to be able to dictate how we protest. And if you fall outside of their acceptable parameters, then they have no interest in that protest. Never mind the fact that the uprising in Minneapolis and the spread across this country is probably the greatest example of uprising that we are going to have in this country in our lifetime. You still had people who sat back and navel gazed over it and criticized it and gave lectured people about the appropriate type of protest. And these are people who are hanging out in our circles. We should expect this from the right. You also have to understand the score as it pertains to the right, because the right do not see the violence that comes from their supporters as violence. They only see what you do as violence. They don't see anything that a white supremacist militia group can do as something that's wrong, But if you do the same thing, if you do far less, if you just go out there and protest with your voice, you are seen as a threat. So this is not something that we should be surprised from the right, but this is something that should be unacceptable in the left, on the left, in our circles. People who get the benefit of our support, our dollars, our clicks, our views, our subscriptions, our patronage. And then they use their energy to talk down and to try to control and to try to lecture and try to wag their finger about cancel culture. At a time when this country is at the cusp of a legitimate revolution that doesn't even have to be violent. If somebody's lecturing over a violent revolution, then fine, I get it. I probably would join them in that lecture. But these people are lecturing over protest. These people are lecturing over a little bit of looting, the people's tax. These people are lecturing over a couple of buildings, cars being burned. Oh my God, the building burned. Never mind, don't say anything about the two people who were killed last night. A car burned. And I'm not talking about the right because we expect them to do that. I'm talking about people in our circles who benefit from our subscriptions, our patronage, our views, our clicks, our general support. We follow them. We like their pages. These are people who claim to be on the side of a revolution, and they spend most of their day lecturing you about how to behave and how to protest in an acceptable fashion. You gotta understand what's actually happening around us. Patrons, stay tuned. Everybody else, I will see you next time. Thank you for being a beautiful audience.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.